Good morning, John Mark. Nice to see you here. I don't think we've ever seen Apollo View stuff before, at least I haven't.
Yeah, not yet. We're a relatively new company. We've been around for 2 years now. There's currently 5 products out on the market. The first one which came out was Rabbit Hole, which is the tube-based VCA summing mixer with subtle warmth through to complete audio destruction. So that's probably the main event to look at here today. We've got some other products like our VCO called Oscillator, which has all the standard waveforms plus some additional wave-shaped ones. The interesting ones are like a square sine, which has got straight edges with a round top, sharp tooth waveform, pulse width modulated saw, which I needed because I wanted to make Hoover basses like off of the Alpha Juno back in the day. A sub output, so there's 8 outputs in total, including a sub output, which is -1, -2, or -2 star, which sounds like a combination of the -2 and the -1 together.
Right, okay, cool.
Okay, yeah. So, should we dive into a little bit of the rabbit hole?
Yeah, let's go down the rabbit hole.
Let's go down the rabbit hole. So at the moment I've got this one patched up with some drums coming from the 606 drums down here. The 606 drums are great, but I always find that the kick drum and the snare drum need a little bit of saturation and warming up, which we do. Rabbit Hole has 2 inputs, so I've got the kick and the snare going in here, but you can expand more inputs with the Curiouser, which connects around the back, which is 2 more VCA inputs. So actually I've got 1, 2, with 2 more each, so there's 6 signals being fed into Rabbit Hole which get mixed prior to the tube.
Right,
so
okay.
Let's just start up the drums. Yeah, so I've got the kick and the snare and the toms going in here. You get independent level control. At the moment we're just listening to the dry signal, so you've got the gain controls for each input, gain control for the tube, gain control for a solid state drive section before the tube so you can drive it harder. There's a feedback knob which you need to engage with the switch, the dry wet knob and the tone. There's CV over everything apart from the tube and the drive. That's because you can CV the individual gains, which is a bit easier.
Right.
So if I start turning the dry wet up, we'll start to hear a bit of the tube flavour. Just turn the solid state drive down a little bit. So you can just add a little bit of subtle warmth in if you like. That's fully the tube. We can turn the tube down a little bit. So you can just blend in a little bit of fatness and warmth just to bring out the fatness in the drums, but then you can get a bit creative and get into sound design territory. So we can drive it a bit harder. And things get a bit gnarly. And you can tone shape that so you can cut out some of the harshness if you need to, or remove some of the bass. Then additionally over here we got the off with their head switch, which is a hard clipping LED diode circuit just before the output, so we can engage that engage the lights and add some extra distortion. You can control the output level here. These are all the CU inputs, so you've got CV for input A, input B, CV over the feedback, CV over the mix, CV over the tone. They're all attenuverters, so you can, for instance, do ducking. If you put a signal into here, you can boost, say, the kick drum, and you could invert the envelope going to channel B to duck a bass line out of the way of your kick or something. But that also includes the output. It's actually an attenuverter, so you can flip the polarity, and that comes into its own when you start using the feedback, because you get then 2 types of flavors of feedback. So bring on the feedback, and you can hear it starts doing little weird self-oscillation things, and if I flip the polarity, you get a slightly different flavor of feedback.
So it's all summed to a mono signal out, or is it stereo?
Everything's mono in and mono out, yeah. So, but then you have this other switch over here. So this one is called the late switch. When you flick this one, it changes the way that the pin 8 of the tube is grounded, and with the right levels going into the drive, you actually get self-oscillation, and it will actually track subharmonics. So it gets pretty gnarly. So it's self-oscillating now, but you can get it to actually track pitches. So if I just cut this one out, I've actually got, let me cut out the hi-hats too.
Nice to see you got the div kit output bus there,
yeah.
Full effect.
Do you know what, it's been so helpful actually. I had such a bottleneck in my system with mixing. I had to have like 3 different sub-mixers to mix things down before mixing at the output bus, and this thing just saves me so much HP. Plugging 6 outputs into it, just to sum down a unity is nice. Fantastic. Okay, so I've got a, hopefully, yeah.
All right.
So I've got some, just a bass line going in here coming from our oscillator. For some reason I've lost my envelope. There we go. So I'll just let this drone for a minute, and then by decreasing the amount of drive and switching on the L8 switch to bring the subharmonics, if I turn this down, you'll suddenly hear, theoretically, there you go, it starts going to like self-oscillation and tracking subharmonics. So if I then play some notes, you can hear it actually tracks along.
Oh, interesting. So it's like a fuzz octavider type of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. It can actually, when it's in self-oscillation mode, you can actually send pitch information into like either the feedback, the mix, or the tone, and it will actually be a VCO in its own right. It will track okay-ish over 1 or 2 octaves, so you can actually utilise the self-oscillation if you like, just as a VCO.
Interesting.
Yeah, but so that's it in general. It's a summing mixer for your mono signals with VCA control over everything, so you can use it as an end of voice VCA, and then you can add in however much character saturation you want, or go complete into sound design territory with crazy, wild, squelchy feedback and glitchiness.
And that's you said that's been available for a little while now.
I'd launched it at Super Booth 2 years ago, I think now.
Okay.
So yeah, it's been around. It's on the market for £349 at the moment.
Right.
So yes, that's Rabbit Hole and its little buddy Curiouser, which goes with it. So Curiouser, as I say, it
input
can be used,
expander, right.
It's an input expander, but they're actually independent VCAs. So when the switch is in the up position, it sends the signal to Rabbit Hole, and when it's in the down position, it comes to its own independent output. And
Right.
this one sums down to that when it cascades down. So you can have an independent 2-channel summing VCA mixer with Curiouser by itself.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.